We've been talking broadly about how we engage with clients, how we help clients, and we're shifting into conceptualization. In order to get somewhere, we need to know where are we and where are we going. So what's key in our conceptualization of the clients are those three issues that Father Roland talked about, right? The first is, how did the client's issues that they're presenting with develop, right? In the developmental context of their families as they were growing up in their childhood. How did these issues come to be, right? What were their familial interactions? And today, what we'll talk about, this is chapter 6, is talking about those developmental and familial experiences. The second is, how are these interactions, how is this attachment style, how is this style of relating occurring over and over and over again? How is this being recapitulated in the client's current experiences within their relationships, right? How are these current relationships that the client is involved in increasing their symptomology and actually kind of bringing them into treatment? And then thirdly, and so we'll talk about that in chapter 7, thirdly, how do these issues come up between the client and the therapist? My greatest hope for this class really is to help all of you to learn how to conceptualize clients. Because it really is one of the most important skills as a therapist. And this is what sets a therapist apart from somebody who's just nice, or somebody who just, it's one of the things among others, but what the skill of conceptualization is it gives us this sharpness, right? It's what doctors have when they hear a group of symptoms, and they say, oh, it's probably this. But what we are becoming is artists and masters of relationships, right? Interestingly, right now the DSM abides by a medical model or a stated medical model. But they try to connect everything biologically, physiologically, and really what you get is, right, you get depression and it's this bunch of symptoms, and you get anxiety and you get this bunch of symptoms, and you get personality disorders are a little bit different, but you get PTSD and you get this bunch of symptoms, and all these different disorders. But those disorders, the way that the DSM kind of lists them just as a clump of experiences, doesn't actually tell us about etiology. How did these symptoms develop? And so a true medical model actually links the dysfunction to an experience which gives the treatment. And so that's what we're learning to do. We're seeing the person as relational. We are made in relationship, we're hurt in relationship, and we're healed in relationship. And we're exploring how is this person, what was the nature of the hurtful relational experiences that have led this person to the symptoms that they're having today, which we would describe as depression. But it's not just this aimless group of symptoms. It's functionally connected to the experiences that this person had in their families of origin, and they maintain those now. And so we are going to begin with the attachment research. So here we go. Okay. What we are seeking to do is to provide a reparative attachment to our clients. And that's to say that we are acting, right? The corrective emotional experience is when our clients have emotional needs and we respond to those emotional needs in a way that's new and in a way that's also helpful. Tiber says in here that what we're doing is not reparenting. Which makes sense on one hand, but on the other hand, I read that and I hear him say, okay, what we're doing is not reparenting, and I kind of say, like, what the hell are you talking about? It walks like a duck, it quacks like a duck, it looks like a duck. I think it's a duck. And so I've kind of sat with that statement that he's made of what we're doing is not reparenting. And in a certain sense, functionally, we are. We're acting as parents. But when he says that we're not reparenting, I think what he gets at as he says that is that we can't give clients what they missed emotionally in childhood. And so in this sense, I think part of the caveat here that what we're doing is not reparenting is to say, you can't make up for lost time. And this is not a fantasy that, I'm going to be the dad you've always needed, or you're going to be the mom that this person always needed. But what we are seeking to do is to provide for them in a way that others have not, perhaps their mom and dad. We're seeking to help them have a greater sense for what did happen in their childhood, a greater sense for how that affected them, a greater sense for the positives and the negatives without blaming, without bashing, and we're helping them to come to know their own stories. And so typically, therapy exists in two stages. And stage one is the secure base. I don't know what that letter was, but it was not what I needed it to be. Secure base and safe haven. And two is generalization. Who can tell me what a safe haven is?
A safe space.
In what sense? Tell me more.
A safe space for emotional experience.
Mm-hmm.
Emotions are allowed to be expressed.
Yes.
And acknowledged.
Yes. A safe haven is a space for emotional containment. The safe haven is the relational experience in which the child consistently believes that when I have emotional issues, I can bring them to someone, and this person is going to be able to hold them with me and actually help me navigate through them. Who can tell me what a secure base is? Paul.
An individual who the client could feel that won't desert him at the end of the day.
Not quite. Not quite.
When it's a relationship where the caregiver fosters some sort of independence between
Yes.
with the child, and they can kind of explore the outside while still knowing that they're there, but that independence is encouraged and whatever.
Correct, right. So safe haven is about dependence. And secure base is about independence. The secure base occurs when the child is promoted in their autonomy, in their individuality. They are encouraged to go out, right? I was with my wife and my 8-month son yesterday at Leonardo's. We were sitting up top and we were sitting in the corner, and he was going all over the place because that's what he does. So I put him down and let him crawl around, and he just kind of beelined it for there was a wall here that kind of separated the room with a big hallway. He just beelined it for the wall, and there was a trash can right there, and he got around the trash can, and at first, right, there was this part of me that was saying whoa, don't want him to go around there. What if an adult comes walking around the corner, kicks him in the face? That wouldn't be good. Right? What if he bothers somebody, right? What if blah, 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 blah? But then I said, okay, I kind of checked myself, and there was a trash can there, so I just kind of peeked up over the trash can, and he couldn't see me. But I could see him that as soon as he got around the trash can so that he was outside of my vision, he sat up and then, peeked around the trash can. right? And I peeked it around the trash can. I was like, yay! Now kind of come back, hoping he would, kind of doubting it. And he turned his head, and he went around the corner, right? What he's doing when he's sitting down and looking around the trash can is he's saying, like, and he's 6 months old, so he's not saying anything except la 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 la, which is hysterically cute. But what he's saying is like, hey, Dad, can I explore? Like, can I be my own person? Can I explore these things that seem interesting? Can I be apart from you? And so in this way, Paul, there is a sense of, can I be apart from you, and will you be there for me to come back to, right? But the key when we're thinking about secure base is something to go out from, right? Will you support my independence and still remain connected to me? Can I be both independent but still emotionally connected? And so, he went around the corner, and I kind of let him go there for a couple minutes. And then I went and picked him up, like I'm not letting him just go everywhere, because it's still my responsibility to make sure he's, reasonably safe. And nobody can study when there's a cute baby pulling on your leg. But we need both, and both of these create interdependence. And that's what we're seeking to create. So in the first stage of therapy, yes, JP.
What is it that secure base that's innate in it is that the child knows that they can go back to a safe haven.
Yes.
And without that knowledge, you can't really have a safe, secure base. And then within a safe haven needs to be the knowledge that you can go out.
No, not quite. No, these are distinct. So they are separate, because dismissive clients oftentimes had a secure base but not a safe haven, right? And other clients might have a safe haven but not a secure base. So they can exist autonomously, though they do, when they're together, they do build on each other, right? That having a safe haven is going to support having a secure base, and having a secure base is going to support. So there's a relationship there, but they are distinct functionally. Yeah. Interdependence. So what the first stage of therapy is broadly, in the interaction with the therapist and the client, we're having these corrective emotional experiences. We're responding differently and more helpfully to the client's needs than they've experienced before. And so the client is experiencing real relational change with the therapist. If it stays there, what we are doing is actually just fostering more dependence. If it stays there, there does have to be some aspect of dependence, and that's okay. We're not afraid of dependence. But what we want is interdependence, right? So there's a back and forth. But if it stays just here in this first stage, we're creating dependence, and the client is never going to change. And so what we want to foster in the second stage of therapy generally is generalization. And that's where the therapist helps the client to recognize, oh, wow, you're being more assertive with me, and I like it. It's going pretty well here. What would happen if you said that to your husband, to your wife, to your boss, to your kids, to your employees, to your sister, to your mother, to your father, whatever? And so we're helping the client they've learned to act differently with us, and we're trying to help them to figure out, okay, who can you act differently like that with outside of your life? And when clients experience and begin generalization, they also experience that I can have a secure base and I can have a safe haven outside of this therapeutic relationship. And then they can step away. Yes, Mina?
I don't really understand the whole concept of secure base and how you as a therapist would provide a client with that.
So secure base is about promoting autonomy, promoting individuality, and giving clients a sense of a mind for their own. So the way we promote this in session, right? Typically, does anybody remember the two things that we're usually doing, the kind of framework for most of our interventions in the interpersonal process? When a client says something, there's kind of usually two steps that we're taking. Identify and explore, right? So that's the explore part is how we create a safe haven, right? So with my 8-month-old, he was like 6 months old yesterday, but he's 8 months now. So with my 8-month-old, when he goes around the corner, I'm physically giving him proximity to explore the world. But with a client, when a client says something like, yeah, today was, or right now I just feel awful, I feel terrible, I can validate that, identify it, I can empathize with it. Oh yeah, I mean, that sounds like it sucks. Awful. Tell me more about that. What does awful mean for you? And that's where I'm working to become a safe base by saying, hey, I want to promote you. I want to encourage you to go into your awfulness. And I'm going to be here with you. I want to venture you momentarily to go into your own shame, your own hurt, your own depression, your own sadness. And I'm going to be right here to come back to. So take a minute to connect with that sadness. Yeah, just feel heavy, right? Connected with the sadness, felt the sensation of heaviness in their body, and then they're coming back to me to say, I feel heavy.
So it's the opposite of dismissive.
Yes. Yes, exactly. Yes, I think so. I think I know what you're saying. Yeah. Yes, Jumbo.
Can we say that, like we were talking about earlier, like the reparenting, we want more of that to happen like in the client's life, like in their relationships, like when we generalize that we want them to be in a sense like reparented, like within their life outside of therapy. That's like the point of generalization.
I'm not sure I understand the question.
It's like
Can you say it another way?
generalization is like instead of like being the like reparenting them in the therapeutic relationship, and like we want them to be able to like have those corrective emotional experiences that they missed out in their childhood, like within their relationships in their lives.
I mean, kind of the short answer is you can't be reparented.
Yeah.
You can kind of, I mean, I think what Tiber would say is you can only be parented once.
Yeah.
And you can't get back what was lost. But what you can have is new experiences that are reparative. So the generalization is taking the new experiences and learning to experience them with other people in their lives as well. Is that answer? Yeah. So you have avoidance and anxiety. These are the two primary things that we're looking at when we're talking about anxiety or when we're talking about attachment. And who can tell me what avoidance is in the attachment framework? Yes.
It's like clients will have this kind of like pseudo-independence and this kind of self-sufficiency, and will see other people as being like unreliable and like unhelpful. And so like, and they have this kind of like fear of being controlled, having their autonomy like undermined.
Yes. Perfect. Perfect. Avoidance is fundamentally about intimacy. Avoidance is about, can I be vulnerable with you? Can I share my emotions with you? This kind of correlates, right, with the safe haven, right? Can I be emotionally warm? Like, can I open myself up? Right? Now, what about anxiety? What is anxiety in the attachment framework? Regan, can you give it a... You hit avoidance right on the head. So.
Anxiety is, it's like worrying over the relationship of whether or not their attachment figure is willing or like, yeah, like willing or able to respond to their emotional needs.
Yes. Yes. Now here's the thing, these are hard to distinguish, right? Because they sound pretty similar. But the key is that anxiety is about approaching. Anxiety is about proximity. The fundamental anxiety question is, will you be there? Will you be there when I need you? It's about security. Yes, there was a question in the back.
Is it kind of drawn from avoidance, like rather you are vulnerable with someone? Because there's a fearful attachment where you end up being vulnerable and you're kind of like kicking yourself for it, like, oh, I shouldn't do that, and you still do. And then there's also, what was it?
So we're not looking at attachment styles yet. The attachment styles actually come out of these two things, right? So these are the two different dimensions by which attachment styles are created, right? So right now we're not talking about avoidant attachments or anxious attachments, although that's like how it will play out. But we're talking about what is attachment made up of? And attachment is made up of two kind of fundamental questions. One is, will you be there for me, right? Can I approach you when I'm distressed? And the second is, can I open up to you? Can I actually be emotionally available to you? Can I actually be emotionally vulnerable to you, right? So I could say, who here has ever said, well, I won't make you raise hands, but I'm sure many people here have said or heard, well, I just knew I was loved. Like growing up, my family wasn't real lovey-dovey, but I just knew it. I knew I was loved. Maybe they didn't tell me that, but I knew I was loved, right? So there's low anxiety there. It's like, no, I know my family's there. Family's most important. But what they can't say is I was told frequently I was loved, and I was told, hey, it's okay to be sad, and I was told you can share your emotions with me, right? So that's these two distinctions, if that makes sense. Mina?
I'm sorry, but I don't really understand the difference between the two. Because they both seem they seem like they're the same definition but rewarded differently.
They do, and that's one of the difficult things about this. Anxiety is about, will you be there? And avoidance is, will you be close to me emotionally? Security is, will you stand next to me while I'm crying? And avoidance is, will you cry with me? Right? Anxiety is it safe for me to come to you when I'm scared? And avoidance is it safe for me to tell you that I'm scared?
I don't understand the point of avoidance. Well, what you're
The point.
Am I safe to cry with you, or will you cry with me? I don't.
Am I safe to bring my fear to you? Am I safe to come to you when I'm afraid? So think of that as anxiety is less so about emotion. Anxiety is not about intimacy. It's about approach. It's about proximity. It's about, do you exist to me? So avoidance is about intimacy. So the availability and willingness to recognize and respond, it's about being there physically. But avoidance is about, will you be there emotionally? That's a good way to put it. Will you be there physically? Will you be there emotionally? Yeah.
So I'm confused a little bit, like, does avoidance also, does it stem from the anxiety too? Because it's like if you are able to, if you're able to not have a fear of intimacy, you're able to bring some of your emotions, that requires you also being able to know that they'll be there. So it's like they would also.
Not necessarily. Right? There are people who say, I have no problem sharing my feelings with you, but I don't know if you're really listening. I have no problem it feels like there's very low avoidance, right? And this is actually preoccupied. There's very low avoidance, but there's a fear of but are you actually there, right? And so I think this will make sense as we kind of explore the quadrants as well. Yeah.
What about being able to bring people your emotions intellectually versus feeling your emotions with them? Does that and
Yes, it has a lot to do with this, and I think that'll be answered further when we talk about dismissive attachment style. Yes. because that's essentially, when you're bringing something intellectually, what you're doing functionally is saying, well, I'm going to show up, but I'm not going to show up in that way. Right? So intellectualizing is a form of kind of dismissiveness by which, by which we're being there with someone, but we're not actually being really emotionally present. Now, we might think and feel that we are, but we're not. So we have, out of this, we have secure, preoccupied, dismissive, and fearful. So this is avoidance. And this is anxiety. And again, this is low anxiety would mean, you're going to be there for me. I know people will be there for me when I need them. I know I can show up and they'll show up and I'm going to be safe. High anxiety is, I don't know if people will be there for me when I need it or not. I don't know if they'll show up. I don't know if they'll be there. High avoidance is, it's easy for me to share my high avoidance is, I'm scared. Yes. Yeah, good catch. Sorry. 2 words different here. My bad. So this is actually low avoidance, and this is high avoidance. Thank you, Lucia. I just wrote this wrong. Low avoidance, again, this is the same, right? Low anxiety is, I trust you'll be there. High anxiety is, I don't know if you'll be there or not. Low avoidance is, I trust I can be vulnerable with you when I'm with you. I trust that you'll receive my emotions and you'll welcome them. High avoidance is, I'm not going to share my emotions with you. I don't think you can handle it, right? And they kind of describe in the book what these clients will say, right? A secure client will say, a secure client is both low in avoidance and low in anxiety. A preoccupied client is going to be low in avoidance but high in anxiety. And what this means is the secure client will be able to say, I know he'll be there when I need him, right? I'm not afraid to be intimate, and I trust that they'll be there. Somebody that's preoccupied is someone that's going to have low avoidance, so it's okay for them to share their feelings, but they're highly anxious about whether people are actually there with them, right? So low avoidance, I can share my feelings pretty easily, but high anxiety, I don't know if you're actually listening. And these are individuals who maybe find it very easy, classically maybe kind of like oversharing, right? People who seem to talk and say a lot of things about themselves, and it's actually typically very overwhelming, right? These individuals who can tell me what defensive strategy they primarily use towards emotions. I talked about this just briefly a few classes ago. Exaggerating, right? We call it hyperactivating, right? So these individuals are so afraid that you might not be there that they're saying, I'm going to amplify my distress to make sure to catch my attention, because if I'm not big enough, if I'm not scared enough, if I'm not frightened enough, you're not going to give me your attention. You're not going to really be there. for individuals that are dismissive, that have the dismissive attachment. These individuals are high in avoidance, but low in anxiety. So these individuals are not emotionally available, but they don't really have a fear over whether you'll be there or not, right? This is the kind of classic trope here is people who kind of talk about like family over everything, family over everything, family over everything. But it's like, oh yeah, but I couldn't talk to my parents about that. Oh yeah, but I couldn't say that to my siblings, or we just wouldn't talk about that. Like it's like this family over everything. Family means everything, but at the same time, you do a little digging and there's like not a lot of emotional connection there, right? Dismissive clients are people who often kind of seem aloof, right? They are low in empathy because they've received no empathy, right? There's a great line, I don't know if it's in this book or it's in another book, but it says, you don't teach people empathy by teaching them empathy. You teach people empathy by empathizing with them, by giving them the experience rather than the explanation. And dismissive clients oftentimes didn't have an experience of emotional warmth. And so they developed a pseudo-independence, which looks like that secure base, right? If mom and dad won't be there, it's like kind of like I'm going to develop what we call a counter-dependence. If I can't depend on you, then I can only depend on myself. And it's this hyper-independence. And then individuals who have a fearful attachment style are both high in avoidance and high in anxiety. These individuals frequently have more severe trauma. These are clients that will more frequently than not be in the psychotic category of disturbance and dysfunction. There's typically very extreme histories of abuse, a lot of dissociation, trauma. Yeah, jump on.
I'm sorry, I'm still hung up on anxiety and avoidance. You were saying low anxiety, if I trust you will be there in my emotions, or
No, low anxiety is I trust you'll be there physically.
be there physically.
Yeah.
But is that not like when in your distress, emotion? Because that's like when I'm mad at you. Or is it just presence besides that?
There's not a real crystal clear way to cut one off from the other.
Because I thought this
But
was about like when you need a
safe
safe haven,
haven would refer more to avoidance, and anxiety would refer more to secure base, but they don't completely, totally correlate and follow. But stick with it. As we go through each, I think you'll get more of a flavor for which each one is. But if you kind of think about it a little bit more like, will you be on the map or not, is about anxiety. Like, will you be on the map of my life and can I come to you, right? And avoidance is, when I come to you, will I get what I need emotionally? So there is overlap, but it's best to think of these things in their extremes in order to understand their distinctions. Yes. But I think you'll see as well, as we go through each, as we go through each, I think you'll see that it's going to make a little bit more sense. Mina?
As a therapist, is it important for you to know your attachment style?
Yes.
Therapy?
Short answer, yes. Yes, more or less.
With therapy, is how you get to know, or do you do some self-discovery or something like that?
You can do both. You can do both. I think self-discovery is both undervalued and overvalued. And this is what I was going to say earlier. You'll get a pretty good flavor for your attachment style just by the way you think about attachment styles, right? You'll get a sense of whether you think like, oh, like, this is just some rubbish, like, who cares? It's just another category of distinctions, like, whatever, like, they can't, you can't put me in a box. Or people who feel like, oh, yeah, probably got some issues. I probably, have some things with my family that I haven't looked at, probably should work on that, like, I'll kind of take a look at that. Or it's like, oh my gosh, what am I? Like, am I this? Am I that? Like, I need to know. I need to figure out, like, I need to be secure, right? And fearful is like, okay, I don't want to think about this, but also I'm really worried that I might be really screwed up, way more screwed up than I ever thought I was. But who cares? But maybe it's really bad because fearful is unfortunately the mix of both. Yeah.
Can avoidance also be linked to like having your needs met? Like with secure and preoccupied, like essentially like the needs are met. But with preoccupied, it's like a distorted view of that. It's like when your needs are sometimes met but not met in other ways.
So we're talking about anxiety and avoidance in two different ways. Right? Right now, when we're talking about avoidance, this is both a category of the dimensions of attachment, and it's also a childhood attachment style, right? So you have avoidant attachment. An avoidant attachment would be a dismissive attachment. But when we're talking about the dimension of avoidance, we are talking about emotional closeness, which could be roughly characterized as dismissive attachment. So short answer, yes. Long answer, also yes, but with more words, because I'm typically preoccupied, so I use more words than I need to. Cool. We will keep rolling. And anxiety, another way to look at this is that anxiety is about seeking support. This is probably a good way to think about it. Think about anxiety as seeking support and avoidance as seeking intimacy. Support doesn't necessarily mean intimacy, right? Someone saying, oh, I'm sad. Somebody saying, oh, you got this, buck up. I know you can do it. That's supportive, but it's not really intimate. Yes, we will place that there and we will continue exploring. When dismissive individuals are feeling difficult, when they're experiencing difficulty, they don't seek support and they cut off from their own feelings. Yes, Rose.
I'll just quick clarifying things. So when you say they're seeking support and seeking, sorry, what was it?
Intimacy.
Intimacy. Do you mean seeking in the sense that like they're lacking those things? Because I thought it's like they don't want those things. Like I thought an avoidant person doesn't want intimacy, and so would be seeking
Yeah.
intimacy, and like an anxious person doesn't want support, and would be, or is afraid of it, or.
Right. So here, when we're talking about these, we're defining what these categories are. That might have been confusing, right? So when we're talking about anxiety, when I'm asking this question, it's a little bit more about like, okay, is it easy? Am I low in anxiety, meaning that I trust that you'll be there? Or am I high in anxiety, meaning I don't trust whether you'll be there or not, right? And another way you could say this is the intensity with which we ask these questions. Will you be there? Everybody wants to know, like, hey, will you be there for me? But it's like, will you be there? That's going to be an indication of a much higher level of anxiety. Same thing with avoidance. But the reality is that people who are highly avoidant just don't think about it, right? Because they've pushed it so far out of their minds. Like, they're not like, oh, I don't want to be emotionally intimate with you. They're thinking like, I should probably go fix my lawnmower. They're thinking like, this guy's a quack. They're not thinking like, yeah, my needs were never met emotionally, so I just don't really want to be vulnerable and open up to you. And so that's actually something that a preoccupied person would more likely say. A dismissive person is kind of like, that realm is just like, right? Because they're cut off from their own emotional needs and the emotional needs of other people. Preoccupied clients will seek support when they're distressed, but then they won't really be able to accept it because they're so preoccupied with wondering whether the person is really able to give them what they want or not, right? So this is the client like, yes, but, right? Oh, maybe we should take a minute to do some mindfulness. Yeah, but I don't know if that'll really work, Oh, you seem really stressed out. Like, let's slow down. Yeah, but I don't think that's really what, and so with preoccupied clients, there's a willingness to go, but the anxiety is such that it actually cuts them off from experiencing the very help that they're asking for. And then fearful clients, this is the more extreme. These clients have so there are push-pull dynamics of both wanting for help but also pushing help away with preoccupied clients, especially tending in this direction. But the fearful clients, this is really exacerbated. It's very intense. What's typified as complex trauma or childhood attachment traumas, oftentimes characterized as borderline personality disorder, where it's there's a terror of being abandoned, which is central to preoccupied, but there's also a fear that people might not be there for them. And then there's also the dismissive presentation as well. So it's called fearful. In childhood, this is called disorganized because that's really what it is. There is no organizing defensive principle. They're all over the place. And so these clients are present with, it's hard to work with them. And we need to, I really like it in the book, he just says, new therapists should not work with fearful clients because you're not ready. You don't have the structure. You need to be, you need to be secure. Short answer. No hands up. Hand up. Yeah.
This might be a base question, but what is the most common attachment style you see?
I have no idea. Probably preoccupied because it's easier for preoccupied people to seek for help. But also, and we'll talk about this at the end of the chapter, although this is a nice little box here, we're not trying to put people in boxes. And the reality is you could be kind of preoccupied here, you could be preoccupied here, you could be on this side of preoccupied, right? So you're going to kind of find that yourself, others, that we're all over the board here. And some people just don't fit into the attachment categories. But you just see a lot of everything. Yeah, but I would probably tilt that towards preoccupied because it's just more likely that these clients will enter treatment. But actually, it's harder for them to succeed in treatment than compared to dismissive clients because of their fear and anxiety. Is there another question I saw? Cool. So let's talk about that. Not having my clock is really throwing me off. My watch doesn't want to turn on automatically like it should. 27. Wow, we are making time here. You know what they say? Wherever you go, there you are. My favorite saying. Teach it to all my nephews, and then they say it, and it's funny. What is secure attachment? Here's the crux. Here's the difficulty of it. Secure attachment, individuals with secure attachment have been hurt less, so it's easier for them to receive help. Individuals with secure attachment do present in therapy, but oftentimes when they present in therapy, it's easier for them to be engaged with the therapist. It's easier to enter in. They have less conflict. They have less kind of confusing presentation. They value close relationships. They have a more realistic perspective. Because they don't distort reality, right? So individuals with a secure attachment are less likely to split, right? To see people as all good or as all bad, or to see myself as all good or others as all bad. They have a realistic perspective. They discuss relationships clearly, openly. They have this kind of reflectiveness where they can say like, oh yeah, I'm sorry, I'm kind of being aggressive right now. And it's not this like, oh my gosh, I'm sorry, did I say too much? But it's just like, oh, like there's a different tone to it, right? There's there's a tone in their conversation that kind of lacks the typical anxiety that we might feel with other presentations. They're more flexible cognitively and interpersonally, right? We've talked before that a really good definition of mental health is flexibility, right? Ordered flexibility, right? Individuals who are able to adapt. It's not a problem to have defenses. We need defenses to exist in the world. The first half of our life is kind of like developing pretty good defenses to help us take care of ourselves. The second half of our life is letting go of those defenses so that we can enjoy our lives, right? But we need some semblance of interpreting the world. So defenses aren't the problem. And individuals with secure attachment typically have more flexibility in how they utilize those defenses. They assess the reality more accurately. They have an internal working model of seeing themselves as good and as positive, although also capable of doing things that are wrong. And also they have an internal working model of other people that sees other people as potentially being worthy of trust. So they're not blindly saying, everybody deserves my trust and I think everybody's good, and there's not a naivety, but they are able to let certain people in and trust others as worthy of intimacy. Most importantly, secure adults are effective in finding trustworthy social supports when needed, and especially meaningful, are usually able to avoid or readily terminate maladaptive relationships. The things that you will see with these clients is that it's not quite so hard for them to plug on a relationship when it's toxic, right? Other attachment styles, especially preoccupied, not so much because of their fear of loneliness. But what you'll hear from these clients is things like, I know he'll be there, I can trust, she won't hurt my feelings, this person's able to comfort me when I'm distressed. And so individuals with secure attachment, they didn't have perfect parents, but they had parents who weren't afraid to recognize when their imperfections affected the child and apologize for it. And I mean, that's really, really the key. Secure attachment develops from parents who are able to apologize well for their lack, for their humanity. Because when parents apologize well, they exhibit flexibility. They say, hey, you know what? I don't have to be the king. I don't have to be the God here. I don't have to be powerful. Right? We'll talk about parenting styles that say you should never apologize. You should never let your child see weakness. You should never admit that you're wrong. But that's a type of extreme rigidity where if we treat children with that extreme type of rigidity, they're going to internalize that working model of themselves, of others in that extremely rigid way. And so when a parent is able to break down and say, oh, buddy, yeah, like I'm the parent, I'm the authority here, but I got a couple screws loose too. And when those loose screws affect you in a negative way, I can say, hey, buddy, I'm sorry. Like, yeah, Daddy yelled and that wasn't cool. I'll really try to do better next time. I know you were scared. What was that like for you, right? Individuals with secure attachment don't have perfect parents. And so they're able to reflect that. They're able to say, yeah, this happened to me or that happened to me. But it's not one-sided. It's not, oh, no, life was perfect. My family was great growing up. And it's also not, it was worst. Everybody was bad. It was terrible. I hate my parents. It's this balanced, even-handed way where they can realistically say what was positive, what were the good things, what was negative, what were the not-so-good things. And that's what creates this flexibility. I did all that and my watch still didn't tell me what time it was. So in insecure attachments, this is just kind of like a little bit of an aside. You have the hyperactivating defense. And deactivating. And then I looked at my watch and I didn't even pay attention to what time it was. 10:33, great. Remember, attachment is about, can my parents see what my needs are accurately, and can they consistently respond to them in a way that's helpful? So individuals who develop an insecure attachment, and insecure just means not secure, right? So all of these are insecure, and this is secure, right? So insecure categorizes all the specific attachment styles other than secure. Their parents weren't able to see their needs, or they weren't able to effectively meet them, or they were inconsistent, or there were other types of problems, right? One defense is hyperactivating. And what's the hyperactivating defense? Josh? Oh, that's good. That's what we'll see the most. But describe it for me. What does hyperactivating mean as a defense?
Their emotions are super overwhelming.
Yes. Now, why are their emotions super overwhelming? How does that function?
Its goal is to elicit some sort of response from the caregivers.
Exactly, right? So if mom and dad aren't consistently meeting my needs, or aren't meeting them in the needs that I want, meeting my needs in the way that I want, what am I going to do? I'm just going to turn up the volume, right? If I don't know mom and dad will be there or not, I'm just going to scream as loud as possible. And hell, if mom and dad aren't there, maybe the neighbor might come over, right? So hyperactivating defenses are turning up the volume, increasing distress in order to get their needs met. The difficulty is that, right, the child, in increasing their distress in order to get their needs met, then has more distress, right? Like, this isn't like, oh, I'm just going to turn it up and that's disconnected. They actually suffer from the very distress that they amplify. And that's the difficulty with preoccupied is, right, they're in a session is the distress is building and building and building. And we can say something like, wow, I'm right here to actually help you with this distress. But as you're building it up, it seems like I'm less and less close to you. It feels like you're going farther and farther away. So you're bringing that to attention. Yes, John.
I'm thinking, what about if like the child needs the parent to show up, like maybe emotionally on some level, so like the child backs up to receive attention.
Yeah.
But then that attention isn't that positive because they're acting.
It doesn't matter.
And then but that can cause anxiety towards receiving attention because they're seeking attention, but then the attention is harmful.
Not quite, right? Because for children, attention is attention, right? Kids act out to get yelled at because I would rather that dad be mad at me and look at me than dad never see me at all.
But that'll still but getting yelled at is better than the parent comforting you, so it'll still affect how you see.
Sure, totally. But it's behaviorally, negative attention is better than zero attention. So there is kickback for that.
But it still affects your relationship with attention because although you get
Sure.
you're getting what you need, but it's not what you really need.
Sure, totally. Yeah. No, it's not good. This is a defensive strategy. It's like, we're not saying oh, this is the best thing to do. You yell louder and then people will help you. It's like, you yell loud enough and everybody will disappear. You yell loud enough for long enough and everybody will disappear. And that's the quandary for these clients. They want people, they're in such need that their neediness overwhelms and pushes away the very people that are willing to help, right? And so individuals with a hyperactivating style have a internal working model of themselves as inaccurately negative, right? So these people think, I can't help myself. I'm no good, right? So their view of themselves is inaccurately negative, and their view, or unlovable, and their view of other people is unrealistic but positive, right? Oh, you're just the best therapist ever. You're able to help me with everything. I know you've gone to school. I know you're an expert. I've heard your talks, whatever, blah, 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 blah. You're the one to help me out. And so there's an overly positive view of other people that doesn't fit reality, and there's an overly negative view of self. And this is kind of like the classic dependent client, the kind of interpersonal sense, the interpersonal wish that the the dependent client has, the kind of personality disorder dependent, is I can't do anything and you do it so well. Right? I'm completely incapable and you're totally capable. Therefore, I need to be close to you. Now, the deactivating strategy is the opposite, right? The deactivating strategy is shutting down emotional needs, right? This would be characterized more as dismissive, although these can occur in different places, but will be, this is most characteristic of dismissive clients, which is I have my needs and they're not getting met. Okay, I'm just going to turn them off. I'm just going to mute the needs. If I mute the needs, I won't have to deal with the pain of rejection. I won't have to deal with the pain of hurt. So maybe, John Paul, a child might experience or experiment with a hyperactivating style when they're little, right, and cry when they need help. But maybe their parents' reaction is so extreme to their crying that they learn like, whoa, I'm just not going to make a peep. I'm never going to have needs. And if I don't have needs, then I can't experience that criticism and rejection from my parents. So it can play both ways, but typically throughout the developmental history, one of these or the other will emerge as prominent. And they have a unrealistically positive and competent view of themselves and a negative or inaccurate internal working model of others as unavailable, hostile, or incompetent. What personality disorders do you think of when you hear this description of deactivating, of an unrealistically positive view of self and an unrealistically negative view of others? Narcissism, right? So this is at the core, this is the core defense of narcissism. There is an idealization of the self in order to escape shame, and there's a devaluing of others in order to push the shame that they hold onto them. Right? There's a projection of shame onto others as being bad and incompetent and unworthy. And then there's an unrealistically lifting up of self.
Would that also be antisocial?
Could be antisocial as well. Yeah, but I think, with the, yes. And even more of an extreme, right, disregard for others. Yeah, very good. Cool. What time is it? My watch doesn't turn on when I do that, but it's supposed to. I never wear this thing. It was my mom's. It's a Fitbit. I'm trying to track my heart rate. I don't know why. Seems like kind of the coolest thing to do these days. What time is it? 41. Yeah, we got time to go into dismissive attachment. Secure attachment, what everybody wants and we think we are, and then we're like, oh, right? We start the chapter like, I'm probably securely attached, and then you start reading it like, I've said that before, I've felt that before, and then you're like, I should probably get into therapy. Okay, dismissive. So dismissive individuals use deactivating strategy. They have a history of being ignored and neglected. Their caregivers constantly rejected or withdrew when they were distressed, right? So this is the kind of experience of, or another thing here, right, is you're so upset, go to your room until you can manage your emotions. The kid's upset because they can't manage their emotions because they are a child, right? And you're going to send them away, right? And what the child learns is when I am emotional, I am rejected. So instead of the child being rejected, they just reject their own emotions. The emotional support was not there when they needed it.
Yes. Does it come from like the cry it out sense of like sleep training, or like when a child, like even if the baby is just like crying and like, oh, just cry it out, like they'll learn to manage it, but they never manage it.
Yeah, I think that the cry it out methodology, right, is a dismissive methodology. Now remember, there's a need for flexibility here, right? So I thought I would be a great parent until I held my baby boy crying for 5 minutes straight, and I was like, oh my gosh, like this is awful. I can't handle it. Like there's just something about a crying baby. When someone else's crying baby, you're kind of like, oh, you know. When it's your crying baby, it just like goes into your freaking spine and just goes like, and you're just like, it's very hard. It's very hard. And so, right, there have been times when my son has been crying, and I said, you know what? I'm getting so overwhelmed right now that I'm actually going to put you down in your crib, even though I know you're going to be more distressed alone. I'm going to step back for a couple minutes. I'm going to take a breather, and then I'm going to come back. Right? So that's a dismissive approach, right? I am avoiding the intimacy because it's too much for me in that moment. Now, of course, I'm coming back, right? But I think the cry it out methodology is a very dismissive approach that says you should be able to handle things on your own. You need to learn to just like tough it out. This is the kind of like buck up, right? The kind of more a more psychologically conservative mentality of like, you know what, emotions, like you just need to learn to stifle them. And so the way that this shows up in current interactions, and we'll finish right after this, the history, right, leads to current interactions. And what happens is that in current interactions, they distort others as being hostile, controlling, or intrusive. They have a fixed sense that seeking closeness with others is futile and reflects a personal weakness. And they minimize or deny any need of anyone because that's been the safest coping strategy for them, right? They expect rejection, and they've learned to reduce their distress by ignoring their distress, by not even recognizing it. Because when they've brought distress forward, they've been rejected. So their history leads to their current interpersonal presentation. And we will pick up there on Tuesday. Is it Thursday today? We'll pick up there on Tuesday. Continue to wrestle with and think about anxiety and avoidance and attachment style. If you've had questions on that, go back to the book especially. But it is not the clearest distinction. So we'll see you guys on Thursday.